I'm going now.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Damn. I was like, he's brought the production value up here, but no.
What?
God damn.
What? How dare you? Okay. Australia's worse off on the world stage by the fact this guy is on the Spotify charts, I tell you. It was going so well. I had such high hopes for you.
I'm gonna pass over to Dennis. You're an engineer.
I felt the spirit. I wouldn't be surprised if I got this off someone off the street selling their CD for like £5. How do I stop it?
This is crazy. Hello and welcome to the Record Players podcast. So again, my name's Harry. I'm here with Jack and Dennis, and today we're having a general discussion about what I think is an interesting topic. So as of a few days ago, I came across an article with Kiss's Gene Simmons in an interview. I think it was on Consequence of Sound. So he was quoted as saying that rock is dead. Okay, rock as a genre is completely dead. So just to pull a few quotes from it, I think his opinion was that rock existed between 1958 and 1988, so a 30-year span of rock at its peak. And you know, again, just to pull some quotes, he said from 1988 until today, who's the new Beatles? So I think that kind of goes on the idea that there's no bands that will stand the test of time anymore, and the audience is fleeting. Particularly with age demographics. So there might be kind of things or artists that come up within the rock field, but then they'll just disappear and nothing will be long lasting. But I think what was interesting is he also said that, the talent is there, but it's the business model that stops it from working. So I guess, again, that's relating to kind of streaming, file sharing, all of that. I took something different from it. I kind of took the idea when you ask, is rock is dead? I mean, I guess it's more for me in the present day. Are there bands that kind of have that kind of traditional, guitar, bass, drums, have memorable riffs, kind of like charismatic lead frontmen? Is that a kind of, that as a genre, is that something that kind of really holds up today?
I think, just because I think we might skip over it later on. So, because he's mentioned about the business practice there.
Sure.
Wasn't it always, well, not always, wasn't it from like about the 70s onwards, a lot of the music wasn't profitable in hard copies, and it was the live shows that made all the money. So streaming shouldn't actually have that much of an impact on a rock band's business model if they're going down the same road that he went down with Kiss. Like, they merchandised the fuck out of live shows because their CDs didn't make them any money, because the record label owned everyone on the record label back then, and they still do. But
yeah, I mean, I think it touches on a few different points. I think he's going to be like a if we're talking Gene Simmons, I think he's going to be like a I don't know, just a dude just set in his ways, kind of trying to remember the glory days while he's now a has-been. I think probably what's more interesting is the question: does rock music at its like core form still excite people, and is it still popular today?
Immediately when you were talking about it, I thought of less so in like the last few years, but for a long time, Muse were filling that gap of like, enigmatic frontmen, big live shows.
Yeah.
They've got a different sound, but it's rock based, and they're very popular in the mainstream. There's lots of people like, I don't particularly like them, but Royal Blood were in the last couple of years another band that broke into the mainstream. They are like riff heavy songs, but it's like, that it's a very watered down version of it, but they are popular in the mainstream with the same sort of style.
There's always going to be that kind of traditional kind of genre style that you'll have like breakout stars, but I think today more than ever it comes down to kind of genre cross pollination. So kind of almost like every genre kind of pulls elements from every other genre. There's no more confines and kind of pigeonhole into like, oh, this is a rock band. It might be, you might have I'm just trying to think of an example, but yeah, it might be like an R&B track, and then they utilize like guitars or like riffs patterns from a guitar, but it's not that kind of distorted rock riff. It's just pulling elements, while maybe like R&B from the 90s would be purely electronic based or focused on a different instrumental palette. So I think it's more of a blend. There's less. Oh, this is rock. This is pop. This is hip hop.
Band that fits that.
Did a guitar solo, right? Lil Wayne had a guitar solo on one track. I can't remember what track it was.
Rock is still alive. That's it. We've sold it. Well,
I can't remember like particular track names at the moment, which is not because I've liked their albums in the past. But Haim is a band, or Haim, however you say it, that like perfectly fits what you're talking about there. Where like they're a rock band if you look at it, but you listen to it and they're definitely drawing a lot of elements from pop rather than heavier rock stuff. Yeah. But like Kiss are not the heaviest band, and like even at the time, they're not like a super out there band in terms of the music they're releasing. They've got like quite skilled, and I'm not trying to not piss off all the Kiss fans. They've got quite skilled members. They've had a couple of different takes on their own style depending who's in or out at the time. But like the biggest part of their movement was the like slightly culty, juggalo effect of dress like a Kiss fan, like be part of the like the storyline of their characters on stage and stuff.
This is what I wanted to get into, kind of, because as I was saying to you guys before the stream started, I was watching Beavis and Butthead, and the Ozzy track "Shot in the Dark" came on. It's off. It was recorded in 1986. I think it's off of the Ultimate Sin, and it was recorded right after Ozzy came out of rehab. So this is like clean Ozzy. And this track came on, and I was like, "Holy shit! Ozzy did a pop song! Like, this is a pop track. There are synths on it. It even sounds like it's got like a 4 to the floor beat because of the way the snare and the kick are done. It sounds like a 4 to the floor sort of house beat. It's pop. Like, I was like, holy shit! Ozzy is actually like properly singing, and I'm like, this is Black Sabbath Ozzy doing a pop song.
I was going to say, like, every 70s band gave up on authenticity once the 80s hit. You can find lots of examples.
So this is what I wanted to get into, right? So Gene Simmons comes from a time when his form, that hair metal, not quite hair metal, but that sort of like androgynous, that rock star, that androgynous rock star like mystique was interesting. That's where you get guys like Alice Cooper, David Lee Roth,
Steven Tyler.
It's that enigmatic funk man with a backing band, essentially, and that was the mainstream. That's how you get Ozzy Osbourne doing a pop song, because the reason why that happened is because Ozzy Osbourne was in a room with people who were producing pop songs, and they did what they always did. They mixed that and they produced that into sounding like a pop song. That's what I sort of get out of it. And so I want to just sort of go from that to looking at to sort of bridge the two conversations, to bridge that time with what you guys were saying about Muse and about contemporary rock music. I think it's still around. I mean, I could just rattle off a few huge names. Obviously, you've got Muse, massive, more in the UK than abroad, but massive.
Yeah, but even then, when you look at Muse, a good example is them, because they incorporate electronic music and I don't know, operatic, symphonic, or like orchestral instruments. So it's not that traditional, 4 dudes in a jam room sound. Sorry to interrupt.
It's all right. It's all right. Another thing I would say, let's bring in sort of the roots of rock as well. The roots of rock is sort of blues, right? So we talk about Aerosmith, we talk about Black Sabbath, we talk about Led Zeppelin. They've got a huge blues influence. Black Keys bringing that sound back. like huge, massive mainstream rock band with that blues.
Have they had much hype recently? Because I remember really liking them kind of in the early part of last decade. I feel so old saying that, but like kind of like early 2010s. Yeah.
I think that was definitely their heyday. I don't know what they're doing recently.
Brothers, the album. I haven't heard shit about them in the last few years.
I saw them on Joe Rogan a couple of years back, but I think that they've fallen off a little bit in terms of being in the mainstream spotlight.
Does that go against the argument of like, is rock dead? At least again, we're talking mainstream. I think saying is it dead in general, that's stupid, because there are shit tons of bands that still use the core instruments and still use the influences, like you say, and the blues sound. But I mean, does it have any place in like the mainstream?
I think if you
that's, I guess, the main thing.
If you look at the history of rock, one of the features is that it goes in cycles, and like it's because there's been so many strong subgenres of rock, it almost needs to go away for a bit so that it can come back as something else. So like they had the like what is now kind of pop rock with the Beatles and stuff. Like I know they're very experimental and all this sort of stuff, but like it came out of R&B and became pop music, like the initiation, the very beginning of it, of pop music. It then kind of went further through into the psychedelic and the experimental stuff in the 60s, and then that kind of gave way in the 70s to more dance focused stuff. It came back as a kind of dance, as a kind of electronic influenced thing that developed into grunge as a kind of removal from that, and then that kind of went away for the late 90s, early noughties kind of more rap, hip hop
new
to be
metal.
The mainstream, and like it keeps coming back and fading, but it comes back as something else.
I agree. I think that's important. Like like a sound will become dominant and mainstream, get done to death. People will be sick of it, and then you'll need to wait for the innovators that will then shift it, and then a different genre or a different subgenre then becomes the thing of choice for the moment. Well, so I agree.
What do you guys think about this? Right, the guitar was dominant for a long period of time, but now I would argue the keyboard, the synthesizer, electronic music is becoming the dominant. So
that is the guitar. That is the guitar of this millennium, whatever you say.
Is that threatening to kill off rock music because more people are going to pick up piano in order to learn how to quickly just create a beat on Logic that they torrented or whatever, and put that onto SoundCloud or even on Spotify, rather than let me learn guitar so that I can play in a band and I can play in my local pub.
But people thought that in like the 60s and 70s when the fucking like switching board synths first came in. You had to plug in 87 different connections to swap your sound from a one Rhodes keyboard to the Rhodes Mark II. Like people were like, this is the death of normal instruments because we can just synthesize everything. And like it's got its place and it makes it easier to do that sort of thing. But I think anyone who goes beyond that first layer of I want to access music easily is going to diversify what they know, and they're going to like learn other things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think, Dennis, it's just used in a different way. So 2 examples that come straight to my mind. Are you guys familiar with Tom Misch? No, he's pretty cool. So kind of, he does make kind of like, I guess, electronic, almost like where it's kind of like chill, like jazzy electronic music, but he uses like guitars on all of his tracks, and he kind of makes almost like loops that you would consider like it's almost like a lo-fi loop, but it's like he's making a new one. So I think that's cool. But another example, completely different, but I'm just thinking of Mac Miller as well. Rest in peace. He used to use guitar a shitload. He played guitar and like recorded guitar and made a lot of his hip hop beats with like a guitar melody as the leading. So it's just that it's no longer like here's a riff, here's shit tons of pedals on it, this is going to be the main crutch of the song. It's used in a different way, and thus that original style doesn't exist anymore.
I think one of the things that's going to be a massive difference between them is that it's see if I'm in tune. Yeah. So if you do like the tiniest bit of learning, and you get a strumming pattern rather than just going something that goes where you've got those chords that are switching and you've got an interesting rhythm, that could be an entire song because you've got rhythmic intrigue as well as like your harmonic stuff with your chord stuff. To get a bum ba bum ba bum ba da 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 dun da dun going on a keyboard is way harder to get that rhythmic. So it's like the initial buy-in is easier. Can I play single notes? Can I play a melody? Can I muck around and make 5 different layers? If I'm on Logic and I record until I get something that sounds good, it works for that. But if you want to just actually like craft songs,
but you can. It's
a higher barrier to learning to try it on a keyboard instrument.
Sure, but you can circumvent that by chopping it up. So you've got less of the aspect of like a live recording, I think, in terms of how like music's crafted now.
But then it's more about then it's more about like are things like piano rolls replacing instruments? Because like you're saying there, like if you can cut up the sample or just write it in as MIDI however you want, I think that's a different argument.
Yeah. But again, that kind of style in terms of using an analog instrument, should you say, to then craft something that's not physically playable by chopping and switching it. That then creates a different sound, which again pulls to different genres, which does go with the argument of like traditional form of rock music and rock sound going away. Because I think to Dennis's point from earlier, the synth or the drum machine is the primary instrument of choice for the majority of music that we'll end up listening to now, at least in terms of like mainstream.
I mean,
do you think?
Also, go ahead.
Do you think the mainstream is reflective of? Because it's what the mainstream tells you is what has the broadest appeal. It's not necessarily what has like the highest level of appeal. It's just what's acceptable to the most people. Do you think it's reflective of people's actual tastes, or do you think it's more less offensive rather than pro what they want?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that. It's hard to answer because I don't follow what's the most popular thing. I will just seek out what I want. So I think for the majority of people their experience is going to be different because, again, just coming back to the crux of the argument, if I want to find a riff-based rock band with four instrumentalists, I can easily do that and I can find people all day. But that is just not going to be what the majority of people are listening to. So it exists. You just have to do more digging. While versus if I was looking at the charts from any year in the 70s or any year in the 80s, I'm sure that rock music would have dominated that chart, that top 10.
Another point that I'd like to raise is I don't think you can underestimate the level to which the music industry's conditioning of radio listeners, regular music listeners, has an effect on what people enjoy. So, for instance,
it's payola.
Payola. What do you mean by that?
It's payolas. It's like the idea where labels will pay radios to play songs. Like this has gone on forever, and then thus that it's almost like it's indoctrinated the general mainstream listener base who's just like, I want to hear what's on the radio, or now it's like, I want to hear what's on a playlist. That's going to become their taste. That's what I think generally will happen. Because people don't want to do what we do. People don't want to do what we do and do some digging and some research. People just want to be like, I'm just going to put this playlist on or listen to the radio, and then, I kind of like that. That's done.
You could argue that the music industry did that with, say, alternative rock in the 90s, where like Nirvana would become big, and the music industry is like, oh shit, okay, we need to find bands like this. Oh, there's this band called Alice in Chains. Let's sign them. Put them on the radio.
Exactly. Yeah, sign every band that sounds like fucking Nirvana, and then let's push their shit because that's what people want. Yeah, you're right. One thing it'll be a spark. Smells like Teen Spirit, whatever. It's the spark, and then it's chasing that trend because it sells.
And one thing, so I've been listening to some sort of old music, so I've sort of been on a bit of a Toto kick recently. So I've been going back to that, and the interesting thing is, like, they're just session musicians, so they use all these jazzy, crazy chords in their music. They do still use the mainstream
145
145 or 1464 whatever. I've got that wrong. I always get it wrong.
A common chord progression, right? That's what you mean, like a chord progression that's guaranteed to kind of be listenable to like the average person's ears. Yeah.
Thank you for saving me, Addy. Yeah, so they do still use that sort of common acceptable chord progression, which is in like 80% of pop music, but they do occasionally just go to they'll give you a little bit of different harmony out there, and it's really interesting. It's also a little bit jarring. So yeah, that's why I'm like, you can't underestimate the music industry's conditioning of people, because of them pushing these songs with these chord progressions in this key, does that sort of just tune your ear to respond to that to that chord progression, to that key.
I think so.
And if someone comes in with like something different, someone comes in with like all these sus chords, sus4 chords, and putting ninth notes in there and all sorts, does your ear sort of go, I'm not sure I want to go back to that, because it's outside of my comfort zone.
I think that's because it's like such a feature of it being a chart. That's always been the way. Like we were saying before, whether you're like, you not only have people like the thing that sounds like what they already like, so that's like confirmation bias or whatever. They also have the people who want to make money from music, hear what people like, make something that sounds like what people like, and then tell people they'll like it because it sounds like what they already like.
But that's what I'm saying with the Nirvana analogy. It's like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You get that kind
of copying a sound that's hit off. Yeah.
Feedback loop.
Yeah. But you're right. Again, it comes back to, I think that is the formula. You know, there'll be a style that will get popular. Maybe it's a couple of artists or a couple of songs. Everything will copy it. It will last for a while, and then, like you said, Jack, they'll probably get a time where it'll get bored, it will get derivative, and then there'll be a new thing to replace it that will then get people excited again. So it is cyclic. And I don't know if like the traditional rock that we would imagine through 70s, 80s, 90s would ever come back, because I can't think. Is there any genre that's kind of done that's come back and been just as successful? I don't know if there is.
Not in the same form.
No, I mean,
it's going to be different, right? It's going to interpolate ideas.
If you break stuff down to like the super genres of like dance, blues based music, rock based music, electronic stuff that's not necessarily like clubby or whatever, or disco-y, then those they've come back in like different forms, but it's always like subgenres are like a new subgenre,
modern twist,
a building on something else.
Like house was huge in the last sort of 2 decades. House has been huge, and I would say house is a call back to disco, because even I think Craig Charles has a funk and soul show where he'll play like I think it's on Radio 2 now, where he'll play. For those who don't know, Craig Charles is a big cultural figure in the UK. He used to host Robot Wars, and now he's a DJ. So
I was on Red Dwarf.
And he was on Red Dwarf, yeah, of course, and Coronation Street. So yeah,
I used to love watching Robot Wars, man.
That was good shit
when I was a kid.
But he does a funk and soul show, and he'll mix like funk and soul with disco with modern house, and it all fits in, mostly because of that 4-to-floor beat. So I would argue that house really is just going back to disco. It's just that 4-to-the-floor beat that will allow you to just get together in a room and dance.
It's a good point.
It's one of the reasons that classic rock is such a bad description. Because like the music then was so diverse, and you can find tracks that are released now that fit perfectly well with tracks that were back then. Like my mind's blanking on their name at the moment, but there was a band someone showed me a couple of years ago that have such a Led Zeppelin sound. Like it's original enough to not be like questioning their rip-off status, but like the vocal delivery very like riff-based stuff, but it's not like super in your face riffs. They're very bluesy. Like it would fit in perfectly well with all that sort of stuff. 70s.
You're talking about Greta Van Fleet?
Maybe, yeah. Actually,
I haven't really listened to them much, but I know they're considered a Zeppelin.
I remember it being a 3-part name, so yeah. That would fit. But yeah, like there's always these like callbacks to stuff that's going on and on. But I think people like it's because people get stuck in their ways. The people that liked Led Zeppelin are still around now, and they still like that sound.
They're desperate for that to come back.
Yeah, and if you're a kid of someone who's into music and likes that sound, you're going to hear it. You'll develop a taste for that sound. You'll look for stuff like that later on.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think just to summarize, I think the idea of like band-based music with instrumentalists being like the hot thing. I think there is probably a time in which that's going to come back, but I don't think the music they'll be playing will be the reminiscent of what you heard in the 70s or 80s. Like I said, it might incorporate some ideas, but the sound's going to be different. So I guess if we all wrap it up, I think to answer the main question, is rock dead? I think personally I would say no, but it's evolved. And there's no way to go back.
I will say one last thing to sort of throw a grenade into this conversation and run away is we're living in a time where we're all in our own little pockets, in our own little echo chambers. So in that regard, it might be I don't see things being as mimetic. I don't see things being as mainstream as they were back in the past, because back in the past you had like 3 or 4 veins. You had like a radio where you like tapped off your where you got your stuff. You had like radio, MTV.
And so everyone's more individualistic now. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah, and not just that, but there's just more places to get recommendations. So you could be into Dead End Hip Hop YouTube channel. That's where you get your recommendation for that. And you could be subscribed to some Instagrammer who does reviews. You could be into Fantano, who's going to push you in a certain direction. So everyone has their own little combination of sources that they're going to pick up whatever kind of music that they want. And the population is orders of magnitude greater than it was back then. Well, not orders of magnitude, but it's much larger than it was back then.
But I think I would suspect that the majority of people that are like, streaming music or buying music that becomes like mainstream are still going to want the easiest route possible, or route, sorry, which would be playlists or radio. And that's where you're going to have that, like you said, the mimetic hive mind. I think that's still always going to be there because people don't want to put in the effort to find stuff that'll be like fine-tuned to their individual taste, like we do.
I think a lot of people also don't care enough to not in a like putting it down kind of way, but like if they listen to music and they hear a song and they're like, that's pretty fun, that's all right. They stick it on their playlist and they're fine with it, and it doesn't go. It doesn't go any further than that. They hear another song they like, they chuck that on the playlist. Like they might not even look into who the artist is or what genre of music it is, or like is it drill or trap? Where did it originate? Where's the artist come from? Like they don't care about any of that. They just they heard the song, they'll stick it on, they'll listen to it.
Yeah, you're going to have two general types, right? You're going to have those people, and it will always be kind of what's being pushed by the mainstream, and they'll fit in around it. But then you're going to always have the obsessives, and going back to your point, Dennis, that now more than ever it's easier with the different sources where you can find music, and you don't have to buy, go to those record stores to buy. It's easier to find the most obscure, specific, tailored sound for you, for the people like us that are like super into music. So.
I mean, on that front, like we just recorded the review for the Scary Hours 2 EP from Drake, and as I was listening to that, I was going through his back catalogue, and I discovered that Marvin's Room, at the end of Marvin's Room, there's a little bit of an outro piano thing, which I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. So I found out who actually did that. It was a guy called Chili Gonzalez. And then I went off on a massive tangent where I was listening to this contemporary pianist who does these interesting, and that guy fills fucking the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah,
He's
and
it would have a fan base.
It would have taken you so much time and effort and money to have the same path.
Yeah,
if it was like 40 years ago, for instance.
And my point also is he has such a fan base that he can fill out the Royal Albert Hall. You know.
Right. Oh, his specific fan base that would be diehards, but the majority of people will have no idea who he is. I think. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. So I think what I was trying to sort of get across is you can't separate music from culture. Like they go together. Like cultural themes, the way that culture interacts, technology, it all gets wrapped up when you look at these themes, when you look at the mainstream.
So society and technology will then end up influencing the sound, what instruments are used, how things are produced, and
like we were saying with how alternative rock just got blown up in the 90s just because of the way that the A&Rs interacted with what people are responding to, and the impact of Nirvana's popularity. Now we have to contend with social media and how that's affecting culture, and I don't think we can say for definite how that's going to impact on the mainstream or rock music.
I also in 2019 I've been staring at this for the last half an hour while we're talking. There's always going to be layers and sub layers of culture. So we'll have the mainstream layer on top, and that'll be what most people see. But even if it's unwittingly, those people will have some kind of influence from a subculture or some it's like cult classic films. We have bands as well and stuff like this. I'm saying this because in 2019, it wasn't his best album, but Jesus is King was outsold by the Tool release, and they haven't released an album for however many years before this.
Yeah.
But in the 8 years or whatever it was from their last album, all the Tool fans have been listening to other stuff. They know that a Tool album comes back, and that little pocket of subculture wakes up again and starts listening to something because they're back. And that's a very specific example. But it will happen with whole cultures and whole scenes.
And that album was not mainstream.
Not in the slightest. Yeah. And Kanye was huge at the time as well. Obviously, the sales and stuff would have dropped off because I don't think it was a unanimously popular album, Jesus is King. But the initial buy-in of people for the Kanye album at that point would have been absolutely astronomical compared to Tool.
He should have a guaranteed minimum amount of sales for anything he releases that probably would dwarf any Tool release. You'd think.
Yeah, especially looking at the statistics for it, how could you bet against that?
And the Christian market is nothing to shake a stick at.
It's true,
huge market.
Nothing to shake a pipette of holy water against.
It actually, I think that Tool album did better than DNA.
Oh wow!
From Kendrick as well. If they were the same year, or it's a different DNA album. Let me double check myself.
Yeah, I think it is down. I think DNA is the
track.
Track.
Yeah. I mean, but I guess the thing is, Tool is probably the peak of their kind of genre in terms of popularity, in terms of kind of progressive.
This could be singles then that I'm looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the point I would make is within their genre, which I guess is out the mainstream, they are number one or up there, right? Is the most popular, so they have a chance. To kind of push against the heavy hitters in the mainstream. But it's interesting.
I think you could say that. Yeah, I mean, AC/DC just released an album, and I think these old dogs, whenever they're still dropping albums, and they do, they like you say, Jack, they just awaken those hordes that have been silent, the silent majority.
So the majority, the silent majority that are scowling and shaking their fist at the top charts, as they wait for their favorite band to release once every 10 years. No. Okay. So I think we should wrap this up. So interesting points from both of you. I think it's not an easy question to ask or answer rather, but it's definitely one we'll keep our eyes to and maybe discuss similar things in future. So we've been the Record Players. Again, it's Hadi, Jack, and Dennis. Thanks for watching and listening. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at TRP_POD. Like I said, catch us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen.
Catch us outside. Cool. How about that?
Catch me outside. Cool. That's it. Peace.